The Eagles were back on the field again for the second consecutive day in pads. And boy, the reporting on Twitter got interesting, to be kind about it. One of the young men, a young reporter out there, kind of put out this report that people immediately started, they were going after his ass, to be honest, guys. They were stepping on his throat about the report. But essentially, this young man had kind of pointed out that there was a quasi first team, okay, that had Jalen Hurts as the quarterback, basically. But this first team had gone up against the third team, which would have been more of the, kind of developmental, third team. And they had a hell of a stand, in the red zone against this quasi-first team. However, what kind of maybe got left out of the report is that this first team offense from the report, it was at the very end of a session to where basically you kept the first team quarterback in there, but you kind of shuffled the line and the skill position players around to kind of create a quasi-unique opportunity here. But it's not truly the first team because, as one of the reporters kind of threw out there, 9 out of the 11 guys that were part of the first team, I don't think it ever really suited up and ever played an actual snap in the NFL for the Eagles. So it was kind of like, be careful what you're calling the first team, because outside of Tyler Steen and Jalen Hurts, this was in no shape, form, or way a first team. And I know, I'm about to say something now that kind of refutes the 9 out of 11 not playing. That's bullshit, because Will Shipley did play for the Eagles. But nonetheless, this first team consisted of Will Shipley. It consisted of Johnny Wilson. So you can see what I'm saying about that 9 of 11. I think that reporter also kind of took liberties. And it also had Quez Watkins, who's played snaps for the Eagles. But nonetheless, 9 of these 11 guys were not first teamers per se. It was a very shuffled up and mixed and match offensive line with very much a shuffled up skill position set players. And it created a little bit of controversy on Twitter today as a result of how well the offense performed. And I got to agree with a lot of the more seasoned veteran analysts who kind of popped in and were like, Brandon Lee Gout was kind of like, dude, calling Will Shipley and Quez Watkins and Johnny Wilson the first team, that's a take, And then there were some other people, I think, like Dave Sangaro and, Rube. I think those guys are a little bit more balanced in the way that they approached it. And they were just like, look, you got to keep in mind of kind of they're bringing them in at the very end of a developmental period. It's not the true first team offense, but it does feature Jalen Hurts. It's giving some of these guys an opportunity to catch passes in game action and real game situations from, the first team quarterback, and it gives you that idea. And I'll also say this about this situation, guys. Just my personal experience as a coach and things that we would do in practice that were similar to this. And by no means am I saying this is what the Eagles were doing, because I, generally speaking, didn't run this against the third team defense. That was the developmental defense, nor would I have gone out there with I wouldn't have gone out there the way that they gone out there in terms of the minimized impact of it. So they really minimized the impact, guys. You're talking about very specific to it. We would switch it up in terms of a possession or two here and there to where we would kind of flip the gears on it. Ours was a little bit more frequent than what the Eagles did. However, when you are dealing with this situation with a quarterback, this is one of these little things that we would do to where we wanted that quarterback to play faster. Well, what we would do is we would make it, kind of be necessitated to where you would put your first team defense up against this hodgepodge, quote unquote, first team offense that's not the first team offense, right? To try to facilitate your quarterback to get the ball out faster, to get to those reads quicker, because the time to throw, it ain't going to be there. It's the stress of point to kind of be in game day situations, man, you're not always going to have 3 seconds plus to sit back here and pick this crap apart. Sometimes you're going to have to hit that plant foot. If you hit into that third step and you're in a rhythm step, once you hit that third step, man, you got to hitch it up and get the ball out of your hands. You can do things like that to kind of facilitate it in a safe manner, right? Because keep in mind, guys, when you're in practice, you don't touch the quarterback. You touch the quarterback, it's a good way for you to be in the doghouse for real. So we would do things like that personally, and I'm sure that there's 1,000 justifications that they probably have for why they did it themselves. It could just be as simple as just trying to get some of the skill position players and trying to get, some of the backup players in sync, so that way if they ever have to come and take snaps in the game, they're in sync with it. You could make the argument that much of the way that I would work with my quarterbacks, they could be doing something similar with Jalen Hurts in terms of trying to get him to get really used to the footwork. Maybe they felt like, hey, man, he's made a lot of great plays in camp, but a lot of them have been off schedule. We want to try to get him in schedule. We want him to play in rhythm of the offense. We want him to be on time, playing within the, the actual scheduled offense, and then rhythm stepping to it. They could be doing shit like that, guys, to kind of switch it up. Honestly, I don't know unless I'm in the room, guys. I mean, like I said, guys, there's 1,000 reasons why you do this. I have to be in the room to know exactly why they did. I'm just throwing out there. This is something we even did when I was coaching a little bit with players when we were trying to get them ready for game experience, really. Like, okay, we wanted to facilitate what it might feel like in a game, right? There's only so much you can facilitate in practice, but if you start making the leverage situations in practice like really stressful, you can kind of mimic a little bit of the game anxiety, right? Like what it feels like, how fast the game flows to you. And especially, like with Jalen Hurts, it's a veteran quarterback. It's a little different here, but, it is a new system. So, trying to get them to feel those reps, especially when you're dealing with a team like the Eagles, guys who they're notorious for not playing starters for a lot of plays in the preseason. You might get a couple of series in the preseason. That's pretty much it. This might be one of those ways where they do things such as like they come in and they have the joint practices and, having these little mini experiments during the developmental period with the quarterbacks maybe, and then adding that in with those couple of series that you get in preseason into the week of preparation for your, week one, might be one of these little miniature ways, guys. This isn't the big thing. It's a miniature piece of it. It might be one of those miniature pieces. I saw a lot of people freaking out about that. Guys, I don't think it means much at all. I honestly think it was something like, I'm not saying that's the exact thing, but it's something like that. They're doing something along those lines to facilitate game experience, in my opinion. And saying that, some news and notes from camp. Well, the big one is Devontae Smith and Mekhi Lemon kind of being, nurtured a little bit. They're being nursed along a little bit with some sort of a hamstring issue. The Eagles are saying, look, this isn't a big deal. These guys are going to be back out there. I don't think it's as huge a deal for Devontae Smith. You can make the argument, look, man, these are install days. Steve, you talked about it literally in yesterday's video. You said part of the reason why the Eagles did so damn well in yesterday's practice was the fact that it was the second time that they were seeing concepts. These weren't totally new concepts for them. It wasn't an install day. And you saw the offense adjust to that and play better because of that. I still want to throw out there that the reports that I'm hearing is it's not that the offense necessarily from the skill position players and things like that played bad. I heard that there were some opportunities. There were some pretty nice catches. I heard Elijah Moore had a damn good catch against Cooper DeJean. I also heard that Dontavian Wicks had a really good catch against Quinion. So there were plays in there. I heard there was a touchdown to Hollywood Brown that got called back for some kind of a procedure, whether it was an illegal motion or it was something along those lines, legal man in motion, or there was some kind of formation type penalty. Something happened there where they didn't get set correctly. Something, I wasn't there to witness it, guys. I only know what I'm hearing reported. It was something along those lines that called back a penalty, and it was more so, this was one of those days to where, like, you're glad it's happening in camp, and you hope that this offense, these coaches get on the offense's ass a little bit, because this was more of the offense shooting itself in the foot more so than the defense taking a bunch of shit away from them. It was more so the defense was just letting the offense screw themselves up, essentially. So, you had one of those days where the offense didn't play that bad from the skill position standpoint, from necessarily Jalen Hurts' standpoint playing. But in the same breath, like procedurally, with an install day, it didn't go to plan, guys. It wasn't the greatest day out there. And, we heard some pretty interesting reps. I just talked about offensive players having great reps, right? Well, it wasn't just the offensive players, guys. Apparently, Jalen Carter got into Tyler Steen's ass in practice today. And Jalen Carter had a pretty damn good pass rush on him from what I hear. So, I mean, it's good to see. Like, we all know this, man. Like, Jalen Carter wants to get into the backfield. If you're not doubling to Jalen Carter, that man should be able to beat pretty much 99% of the offensive guards in the league. I'm not going to sit there and say that there's not a guard out there that can't one-up on him. There are some dudes out there that are damn good players. You know what I mean? But with that said, like, Jalen Carter should be on a one-on-one situation. Yeah, man, I mean, this is a matter of desire. Go want to make the play more than this dude wants to stop you. Because from a talent perspective, you're on an unequal footing here. You know what I mean? You look at things like that with Jalen Carter, it's good to see those reps coming in. I heard a lot about Jordan Davis today. I heard Jordan Davis is having a pretty damn good camp. I heard that his pass rush, moves are kind of like becoming noticeable. Like, they're not saying that he's as nuanced or as good as a pass rusher as Moro Ojamo, but from judging early on in Jordan Davis's career to where he is right now, a lot of reporters are saying, like, man, he's developed a couple things in the toolbox here. Like, he's got a couple decent pass rush moves that are really hard for some players to defend. I think he got Cam Jurgens on one from what I read today. Cam Jurgens had one really good rep against him, and then I heard Jordan Davis kind of got a payback rep against him where he really kind of did it's kind of like a reach and pull kind of technique. and kind of got himself through, Cam Jurgens to have a pretty damn good pass rush rep there. Pretty good one-on-one, I guess, is what it was. So, I mean, you look across, the entire roster here, and you're hearing about guys are kind of rising here a little bit. Drew Makuba's having a good camp. I think that's pretty cool to see, guys. It's going to be interesting. Michael Carter made a pretty good play in practice today. I know you guys probably have heard about it by now. That was the play to where Hollywood Brown thought pretty much the play was over, didn't keep running through it. You guys are calling it, he pulled an A.J. Brown, essentially, and he didn't go all the way through the actual route, situation here, and it ended up resulting in an overthrow, and then basically Michael Carter made a hell of a play on the ball to get it. So, you can make arguments that, like, Michael Carter is going to be an interesting guy because there is some theory floating around there that even someone like me who told people a long time ago, I told people months before it happened that they were going to move Cooper DeJean to safety. I told everybody this shit was coming. I knew when they basically quietly were stating to us they weren't bringing back Reed Blankenship. I'm like, well, shit, the writing's on the wall. Cooper DeJean's going to safety in base. And I was telling you guys that, in my opinion, just judging how often they play base, because base is, it can be anywhere between 15 to 25% of the snaps for the Eagles, base can. If you're looking at 15 to 25% of your snaps, you're talking about anywhere between 150 snaps a game to a little over 300 snaps. I'm sorry, not a game, a season. To a little over 300 snaps a season as a safety. Like, it's not the primary spot, but in my opinion, I'm like, look, that's significant. The people trying to act like that's not a significant amount of snaps, like, man, I got some motion for a property for y'all in Arizona, man, because y'all tripping. That's significant. That's a lot of damn playing time at a position, guys. Even if it's not his dominant position, even if he's still primarily a nickel. Well, now you're kind of hearing that with Michael Carter and, with some of the guys that we have in the secondary, Jonathan Jones, you're hearing some of this stuff like that where they're saying, like, hey, there's some, Gush. There's some interesting guys that could potentially play down in the slot as well, depending on how the Eagles kind of want to switch and move stuff up. I'm not saying that they're going to completely remove Cooper DeJean from the nickel. I think Vic has been very clear that at the nickel spot, Cooper DeJean is an all-pro level talent. As an outside corner, he's a very good one. As a safety, might be a permanent position move eventually for him, but, we don't know if he's all-pro level yet. We know he's all-pro level at the nickel spot. It's interesting, right? Because we're still talking about percentage of snaps, guys. I still think he's primarily a nickel, but I've heard a lot of suggestions floating around now, and it's not just random people on Twitter saying it now. Now it's coming from people with actual access to the team, reporters that are getting quotes from coaches and stuff that are saying that, that might not be as far-fetched as people think. Like, he might play more safety this year than people are suspecting. I don't know yet, guys. My thing is, I know he's going to be there in base. I know it's probably going to be over 150 snaps to upwards of 300 snaps, but anything beyond 300 snaps, that's kind of exceeding even my expectations or my prediction on it, if you will. So we'll have to see how that plays out, guys. I'm not guaranteeing shit on that kind of stuff. I don't know. But, I tried to tell people a long time ago to kind of suspect this. I got fucking chastised for it on Twitter because people didn't understand what I was saying. With that said, we're seeing that this Eagles team is kind of, it's forming. You're seeing the guys that are standing out a little bit, man. I got to be honest, man. I'm a little tossed up on what they're going to do at the running back and receiver spot. When you look at this, you got 4 guys vying for 3 quarterback spots unless they keep a 4th quarterback, and I really hope that's not what happens, guys. I'm not projecting it personally. I hope that's not what they do. I think keeping 4 quarterbacks is an absolute nightmare and it's ridiculous. But then you get into, like, okay, are they going to keep 4 running backs, right? Or is Will Shipley going to lose his spot? Will Shipley had a bad drop today, guys. From what I understand, it would have been a walk-in touchdown that he dropped. Not good, man. Will Shipley is simply hanging around on this team right now because of his special teams contributions, because he's a kick returner. He can be a punt returner. He's got the hips and fluidity for it if you needed him to. He's kind of like a slot receiver a little bit, where he's got that kind of fluidity inside of his hips, right? And he's a personal protector for the punt team. If it wasn't for that, everything that I'm reading is saying that Dameon Pierce is outperforming him in camp. And Elijah Mitchell, I don't even really think's got his chance yet. But Elijah Mitchell's got experience in this scheme and system too. This is a 49ers guy. That's where he started off at. Dameon Pierce with, coming out of Texas, he's had his time with West Coast systems himself there. But, Bobby Slowick and those guys. So, it's interesting, guys, because I don't know exactly how this is all going to shake its way out. But I do think that the running back spot right now with Will Shipley and Dameon Pierce, I think it's an interesting race right now. I'm kind of falling in line with a lot of people too that I don't think we've reached the point to where Will Shipley has played his way out of it yet. I do think that his ability to play on special teams is hanging him on the roster right now. But for how long? How long before they start finding other answers on, personal protector in and on, kick return? There are other guys that can take kick returns. There's other guys that can return the punts as well. Like, there's other guys that can be personal protectors. Like, I don't know, man. Shipley better turn it on, man. It's not looking good, to be honest, for him. And then when I get to the receiver room, one thing that I'm noticing that there's an interesting kind of development taking place here to where with Mekhi Lemon, and I don't think this is going to affect Mekhi Lemon in terms of being available for the season, guys. I'm not saying that this hamstring is anything like significant. It is affecting his ability to get into the offense and to build some sort of a rhythm, some sort of cohesion, some sort of chemistry with the quarterback. With that happening, man, I'm wondering when you got guys like, look, say what you want. Dontavian Wicks is having a damn good camp. Dontavian Wicks is playing his ass off. Darius Cooper's having a damn good camp. And boy, Elijah Moore came on. Elijah Moore is starting to play some ball. My point being is that when you got guys like Elijah Moore and Hollywood Brown, when you got Dontavian Wicks and you got, a guy like, essentially, Devontae Smith, you could probably take your time with Mekhi Lemon. Mekhi Lemon's probably not a guy that has to come in right away and be a contributor offensively. Now he's probably going to be playing in on the punt return stuff. And eventually the Eagles are going to want him in games. But what I'm saying is you don't have to use him in the first few weeks of the season. This is a guy that can be used pretty sparingly in the first few weeks of the season, build his confidence up, build his familiarity up with the playbook and the system and the scheme and where he's supposed to be, then start working on building the chemistry with Jalen. And then after you build the chemistry with Jalen, then you're building on to this is a foundational piece of the offense going forward. I think that the Eagles have the kind of stability on the roster right now to where they're afforded a lot of luxury when it comes to their first 3 picks. I think they're afforded a shit ton of luxury when it comes to Markel Bell, when it comes to Eli Stowers, and when it comes to Mekhi Lemon. I think that those guys are going to have the opportunity to kind of be brought along at a healthy rate, at a healthy pace, right? One thing I will say about when Jalen Reagor was a rookie, and mind you, he had that stupid-ass injury in camp to where he was basically chasing down an interception like it was the Super Bowl. Ended up getting hurt on that play, and after that, it kind of derailed his offseason a little bit. Then he got into games, and shit was all wrong. I think, the difference between Mekhi Lemon and Jalen Reagor, other than I think Mekhi Lemon's just a far better route runner than what Jalen Reagor was, I think Mekhi Lemon has the opportunity to kind of be gradually increased into his role in the offense, right? I don't think Mekhi Lemon has to be dependent upon heavily right from the jump. Now, look, I'm not saying that he won't get there faster than I'm predicting. I'm saying it's not necessary per se. And that's making me reconsider the way that I'm looking at the wide receivers, especially if we keep 6. The way I'm kind of looking at it now is that there's a real fight going on between Johnny Wilson, Darius Cooper, and then probably the way I'm looking at it currently, Elijah Moore. And I almost feel like right now, mind you, a lot of camp left, a lot of time for this to get changed. I don't think that the final decision has been written yet, guys. But, you look at it from simple fact, you got 3 guys that are locks on this, okay? You got Devontae Smith, you got, Mekhi Lemon, and then you got Dontavian Wicks. Those 3 guys are going to be locks, all right? A 4th guy who's pretty much damn near a lock, because if he's not on your roster, you're probably going to trade this player because of the contract behind it and the fact teams would have value in him, which is Hollywood Brown. I think he's the 4th guy. Then when you get to that 5th and 6th, my mind's kind of changing a little bit. I think the 5th guy, because of the uncertainty around Mekhi Lemon and the fact that this person with experience could potentially be the 4th receiver if Hollywood Brown is kind of playing more in the offense. And you know what I mean? Like, I think that can easily make Elijah Moore your 4th receiver. And then that kind of makes, your decisions easy, because then your 5th becomes Darius Cooper and your 6th initially is Mekhi Lemon. And then Mekhi works his way. He's going to eventually get his shine. He's going to get his shot, I should say. That's the gut feeling I got right now about how this wide receiving core is kind of shaking its way out. And I've even seen some people say, Hollywood Brown probably, you're going to give a little bit momentum because Hollywood Brown's a little bit more known than Elijah Moore, even though Elijah Moore has played in the NFL and he's got a few, 500-yard receiving plus seasons on his resume. But I don't think he has the same accolades as Hollywood Brown. I don't think he's viewed the same way as Hollywood Brown. But I've heard some people say, like, man, I don't know. I might even put Elijah Moore over Hollywood Brown right now. Interesting. Darius Cooper's another one that's like, dude keeps making plays, man. He's dirty in the run game. He gets out there and he blocks. This guy will help you even in pass pro. I showed you some plays where he was chipping in the Cowboys game and depleting people, and basically kind of working his way in as a chipper. And then you've seen this guy make, tough catches. He's strong. He's physical. He can play all three alignments for you. I don't know, man. This thing is taking an interesting turn, in my opinion. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts and your opinions on the situation, what you saw going on in camp today, what you heard about it. Listen, if you guys want more information, I'll throw you up another video where we just did. I'll throw you, yesterday's video, if you haven't seen it yet, where I was talking about the offense having that crazy good day in camp yesterday. I'll throw that video up right here. Then over here, guys, I'll throw you another video up that's player evaluation, scheme, something of that. Give you a little bit of the X's and O's of things. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention, guys, and I'll see y'all on the next video.